Hi, I'm Steelfur of Steelfur Speaks, and this is my new player set review. This is a playlist that's just started, so if you're seeing this as a new one video in, that's why, where I basically review every new set that comes out and ask the question, is this a good set to get into the game of Flesh and Blood as a new player? And I'm going to try and be as fair as possible, talk about the good and the bad, not just my personal preference, and really try and help guide new players towards a good set. Now, I will say at the start, just to disclose, I think any set getting into the game of Flesh and Blood is good because I think the community is fantastic and the game is fantastic. So I think whatever your starting off point, you will eventually find a home. And if you go to a Rosetta draft and you buy a Blitz deck and none of the heroes are for you, then you'll find it very easy to maybe borrow a deck from the community or talk to the community about what hero is good. I have a whole playlist dedicated to helping new players find the hero that is for them, because this is very much like a fighting game. You're going to pick a main, and that's the one you're going to play for a long time and the one you're going to associate with, whether it's due to aesthetics or anything like that. So, you know, if you do get in and your store is playing Rosetta and you're thinking, oh, Steelfur said Rosetta is not a good set for new players, I shouldn't get in then. Don't do that. Get in anyway, go to some drafts, meet your local community, and just get cards from an older set. This is more talking about whether or not you as a player should invest in a new set or an older set. So keep that in mind, and let's dive into whether I think Rosetta is a good set for new players. First, the blurb. Return to Candlehold, which is a place in the Aria region of Wraith where Fab is set, where Earth and Lightning converge in Flesh and Blood's first all-arcane set. Rosetta features 4 new heroes across Wizard and Runeblade classes: Florian, Verdance, Aurora, and Acilio. With the return to Aria comes the return of the elemental talent, so that was last seen in the Tales of Aria set, which I think is set number 5 or 6, so quite a while ago now. And that will see heroes wield and meld Earth and Lightning cards like never before. The Path of Earth rewards the slow and steady, patiently planting seeds for a bountiful harvest. The Path of Lightning rewards the fast and fervent, burning bright like a shooting star. Will you outlast or outblast? With a brand new 2-class, 2-talent set structure opening up new sealed deck and booster draft possibilities, the return of the elemental talent to constructed, powerful support cards within the expansion slot, and a collection of 24 stunning full art Marvel cards, Rosetta will enchant players and collectors alike. So just a note, like, we are firmly into, I call it Fab 3.0, but roughly after Uprising and then really reinforced with heavy hitters, we moved into this new format where sets come loaded with full art Marvel heroes and special treatment cards and special hidden like slot cards. In this set, it's a full art weapon called Rosetta Thorn that's just gorgeous, and it has 2 sides and there's art on both sides and it's fantastic. So we've moved into a thing where, you know, there's tons of actual goodness in the boxes. Before, you know, it was hit and miss with cold foils, and sometimes there'd be a special card, but it wouldn't be uniform through the set. So, you know, if you're buying anything from the heavy hitters, part the Misfail, even into Rosetta, you will find those boxes are loaded with some goodness. Whether you open it or not, still TCG variants. If you're looking to buy on a budget, still buy singles. But if you are someone who enjoys opening boosters and maybe getting something spicy and likes the gambling, then, you know, these last three sets have a lot of really good things to enjoy in them. The expansion slot's also new. That's just bringing support for other heroes. But if you look through all the heroes in this set and you're like, none of these heroes are for me, I actually have watched Steelfur's video on, you know, Kasai from Heavy Hitters. There might be a warrior card in this set. In fact, there is a warrior card in this set in the expansion slot. But again, don't buy a booster for an expansion slot card. You buy singles and that takes care of it. The set structure of the set is fine. I mean, it's got 2 talents. It should be all right for draft. The sealed deck experience looks decent. So we haven't really got any criticism there. These are the 4 heroes that are in the game, so I mean, if any of the art or the abilities of these catch your attention, then of course I have a playlist that has guides on how these heroes play and all the intricacies and whether I recommend them for new players. In general, the 2 on the left, the 2 Runeblade heroes, I recommend more for new players. The 2 on the right, being wizards, are a bit more complex, especially Constella. In fact, I kind of go full from left to right in terms of which one I think are better for new heroes, with Acilio being the least and Florian being the most. So have a look at those videos in that respect if you're wondering which of these is going to be the most accessible. But there's Earth heroes, there's Lightning heroes, there's wizard, and there's Runeblade heroes. Runeblades are typically playing a mix of attacks and non-attack actions. They're typically playing for bigger turns that utilize a lot of cards to get lots of value. And wizards are typically trying to play the game a little bit differently, you know, either trying to combo or deal arcane damage, or kind of trying to be a bit more spicy, play with instant speed effects and that kind of thing. So there's a lot to dive into enjoying these heroes in the set. I think from a hero design, this set is good. They have 4 heroes with very interesting wheelhouses. They don't feel the same, even though they share card overlap. They all feel slightly different, and that is very good. And I feel just like the thematically as well, you know, the lightning and the earth, the summer of Verdansk versus the autumn of Florian. I feel like they've done a really good job aesthetically with the set. So, you know, a lot of the game of Fab is aesthetics and enjoying the hero, because actually the gameplay of a hero will change as they come and lose new cards. So if any of the aesthetics of these heroes are grabbing you, like for me, Verdansk and Florian are just brilliant, then that might be a reason to get into this set. And I feel like hero design in this set is excellent, so I think it's very much worth it. These are the primary keywords that appear in the set, though there are some returning classics. The 3 main keywords that are appearing are Amp, Decompose, and Meld. Amp appears on wizard cards, and also on some of the earth and lightning cards, so it's a full mix throughout the set. Decompose explicitly appears on earth cards, and Meld can appear on anything, and a lot of the Meld cards are actually hybrid, so there'll be a class and an element, for example. Volazar, the lightning rod, has Amp. Amp just says the next time you would deal arcane damage, instead deal that much damage +1, and you can kind of see the strategy of Volazar with playing lightning cards to get Amp. Amp is just really powerful for loading all of your arcane into one big attack. The reason that's good is that arcane barrier usually, you know, caps out around 3 or something like that. So if you can amp to like 6, then your arcane damage is probably going to go through, so it's really good to load it all into one attack. Decompose is the earth keyword, which if we just scroll back, you'll notice both of the earth heroes have a, if there are 8 or more earth cards in your banished zone, they get an ability. Decompose is how you turn on those abilities, so you're banishing earth cards from your graveyard, and by doing that, this gets 4 more power and you get a kicker effect, and of course if you do it enough, the hero ability turns on. So this is what they mean. Earth is a really slow ramping ability, because you have to play minimum 3 of these Decompose cards to turn on the hero ability. But once you turn on the hero ability, the value of every card you play goes up immensely, so therefore earth heroes want to wait a bit. Wizard heroes are just, how can I get this instant speed, how can I get this damage, how can I go fast, which is represented very, very well by the Meld card on the right hand side. Sorry, not wizards, lightning heroes. I said wizards, I mean lightning heroes. This is for Aurora because it's a Runeblade lightning instant. So you can see burn up, shock. This is a Meld card. You can play one or both halves. They both cost the amount in the top right corner. So this cost 1. Each side would cost 1. To play both would cost 2. Because it's 0, you can play both for 0. In order to play the action, you have to play it on your turn with an action point. As normal for actions, the instant you can play whenever you have priority. There's no weird jank that lets you play the instant on your opponent's turn and get the action ability for free. You do have to do them at the same time. The instant will always resolve first if you play both, because it's an instant, so it gets layered afterwards. These are just small things, but Meld is a really, you know, I just want you to have an idea of what the keyword is doing before I review them. I will say that for keyword complexity, I think all 3 of these are really fun and interesting keywords, so I rate the set quite highly. Based on the keywords, I think Decompose has a lot of just simple, straightforward gameplay, but the fact that it ramps up slowly, feels very earthy, feels very strong, and really deciding when to play your big threats is quite fun. I think sequencing amp is some of the most fun that I've had in the game, you know, and there are some crazy amp effects that you can get into. I've seen turns where there's 30 amp going down on the table and people are just blowing heads off with arcane damage using amp, so that's not to be underestimated. It's really fun, and genuinely I really enjoy Meld. For reference, so that the right hand side of the card is almost always the same instant. So for earth heroes it's gain 1 life, for lightning heroes it's deal 1 damage. I just love the flexibility and the, you know, sort of the the kicker effect of having those instants there. There have been times in games I've played where the ability to gain 1 life has stopped me from dying or given me what I needed to get extra kickers from gaining 1 life. There have been times when 1 extra arcane damage at instant speed has made the difference in the game. So I really like the flexibility, and obviously I really like the power of playing one of these cards and getting both of the effects. So I think on keywords, the set scores really well. On heroes, the set scores really well from an interest perspective. How does it score from a new player perspective? Let's just talk for a second. So I've said good for new players Florian, good for new players Aurora, mid for new players Verdance, and really just not recommended for new players Acilio. His ability you'll have to watch the video on him because it takes 15 minutes to explain why he's not good for new players. But essentially just think he's got a layer of complexity and combo that is required to make him work, and I don't think the new players will do it. But that being said, 2 of the heroes I recommend for new players. 1 I think is all right for new players, and only 1 of them isn't. So on the hero score, actually reasonably a good set for new players. On the ability score, I think everything here is going to be understandable. There are some cards in Lightning that worry me. And I'll just say that. There are some cards in Lightning that worry me. It's one of the reasons why Acilio is below the list, and one of the reasons why Florian is better. So if you're a new player and you're really intimidated by a new card game, and you want to get in with Rosetta because you love the themes of a set, I would be saying, hey, take Florian. I think you're going to get him. I think he's going to make sense. Take him. He's the one to play. If you're up for a bit more of a challenge, Aurora. If you want more wizard combo, you're willing to get into the weird instant speed amp kind of stuff, Verdance is there. And if you're coming from another TCG, genuinely, it's the only time I recommend it. If you're like an Is It player from Magic, or you're coming from a combo heavy card game and you just love putting stuff on the board and making it work in the right order and putting the puzzle pieces together, then you can look into Acilio. But even then, I wouldn't recommend it as your first hero. The keywords are fine. The keywords are great. The keywords are interesting. The set's also got some interesting tokens just to look at. Earth heroes make embodiment of Earth. That means they can defend better because their non-attack actions get +1 while defending. Lightning heroes make embodiment of Lightning. That means they go a bit wider. That kind of encapsulates the 2 differences of the set. All the rune blades can make rune chants, which gives them arcane damage. So those are the 3 main tokens in the set. So mechanically, I've given it 3 stars. The arcane damage is more complicated for new players. Just having to put in Arcane Barrier and Spell Void, understanding it. There's a lot of tokens and auras, which means there's a lot of permanents on the board that have to be kept track of. Like, for example, if we look at the last page, have you destroyed your embodiment of Earth at the start of a turn? If you're a new player and you're overwhelmed by attacking and blocking already, are you going to remember to destroy your embodiment of Earth in the right timing? Have you triggered embodiment of Lightning? Even in experienced games, the number of times someone hasn't done their embodiment of Lightning correctly and given themselves go again. How are you triggering rune chants? Like, they trigger when you play an action or activate a weapon attack. What does that mean? There is a layer of complexity in the arcane damage and the token and aura generation that I think puts new players off a bit. There's also a lot of instant speed interaction. And okay, you can play someone like Florian who has less of it, but if you're playing just with Rosetta as a new player, you're going to be a bit intimidated by the amount of instant speed. So that is just something to be aware of. That being said, I do think it has a good range of abilities, and the fact that it well represents both aggro and control is good. So I think it is a reasonably good set for a new player, but I feel like the complexity of managing the tokens and the auras, especially the ones that don't block, that kind of dilute your deck with non-block cards, make it a bit intimidating. And then also just the amount of instant speed and the arcane damage reduce it by a bit. But I think otherwise it's a pretty broad set. It has a lot of good mechanics. The keywords are good, so it gets 3 stars out of 5. Accessibility then. There are some very complex timing interactions in this set, just in terms of how I'm layering meld cards, when I'm returning a sigil, how I'm responding to the trigger of a sigil. You know, there's quite a lot of little complex timing interactions, especially on the lightning side, that I think will put a lot of new players off and put them in a bit of hot water. So that's just something to be aware of. I also think that deck building for some of the heroes is a bit difficult. There are like correct ratios of decompose to earth cards, non-attack actions to attack actions, instants to cards that block, pitch obviously, but that's something the new players all have to learn. There's also like, how much combo do I want? How do I stack that combo? There's lots of questions about deck building that I think is a bit difficult. I also think ramping gameplay to an extent can confuse people, and I say this because a lot of players when I see them pick up Fab, the first instinct is to send their red attacks the second they draw them. So they're like, well, I've got this red attack. I want to deal some damage to my opponent. Let me send my biggest attack. But with ramping heroes, that's really not the solution. Like if we go all the way back to Felling the Crown up here, if you play this early game before you have Earth cards, it's only a 3 for 4. It's incredibly below rate. But if you play it later on, it becomes a 3 for 8, which is not only above rate, but it has a really good ability. Understanding that you shouldn't be wasting your Felling of the Crown early game, and you should be pushing it late game, is skillful. And I think a lot of new players are going to waste a lot of their resources and feel like they're not getting the most out of their Earth heroes because the gameplay is confusing. So I feel like I can only really give it 2 stars in terms of accessibility. I feel like there's a lot of complexity there, a lot of challenge with deck building I think new players aren't necessarily going to enjoy. However, if a set is mechanically pleasing and not very accessible, then its depth is probably there, which means it is quite rewarding. So it is, you know, when you dive into heroes, you get a lot of the reward for investing time with them. And what do I mean by that? I mean, like, Acilio is quite complex, but if you invest time in him, he will feel good to play because you will get those combos and you will have a pleasant experience. There are lots of different ways to build all of the heroes in the set, which means if you invest the time, you will find, oh, I can build aggro Florian, I can build defensive Florian, I can build one turn kill Florian, I can build combo Verdance, I can build mid-range Verdance, I can build combo Acilio, I can build aggro Acilio. You know, I think Aurora only comes in aggro, but my point is the heroes have a lot of flexibility inherent in their toolkit. And the other thing is, because they're wizards and runeblades specifically, those are 2 classes that have a very complex and well-established card pool with a lot of very interesting interactions with. So not every class has that history of interesting interactions. Like, I wouldn't be saying the same thing about Ninja, for example. They don't have a interacting with a complex card pool. They have a fairly straightforward card pool, some of which is good and a lot of which is siloed for old heroes. But you will be with these heroes literally pooling through wizard cards and runeblade cards and being like, oh wow, there's this card from Crucible of War or Arcane Rising that's really good in this deck. And some people will really like that, so I think it's worth saying that you are rewarded by knowing the broader card pool in a way that you're not going to be with every set. So depth is there. So if you're looking for depth and you're willing to handle the adversity, this could be the set for you. Overall, though, I think I have to give it 3 stars out of 10. So middle of the road as a new player set. I feel like the mechanics are interesting and good. The keywords are good. The heroes are well designed. It's a very, very well-rounded set. I think it's going to be really fun in limited and constructed gameplay. But for new players, I feel like some of the complex time interactions, the deck building challenges, and the questions posed by how they play, like how Ramp plays, how Acilio plays, brings down the accessibility quite a bit. I think the depth does bring us up a bit because I like to see players being rewarded for their investment. I don't like to see sets that are too easy for new players to get into, but then when they dig a bit deeper, they realize the hero they've invested in is too shallow to get a good return of. So I think if you do invest in the set, you will get good returns, which is worth some points in my eyes. So I'm giving it 3 stars out of 10. I still think of the recent 2024 Fab sets, Heavy Hitters is still the best for new players in terms of offering depth, accessibility, and fun gameplay. So I would still point new players to that. But if you are really enjoying Rosetta, if you love the aesthetics, if any of the heroes just come out and you think, this is my hero now, I think that is one of the most important things to do in Fab. And I really just encourage you then, go and invest time in that hero. Maybe not in Acilio. I would have a good look at the Acilio cards before you fall too in love with the robot. But for any of the others, I think if you look at Verdance and you say, that is mine, I perfectly understand you, and I think you're going to have a good time. For me, the art in Rosetta, the aesthetic, the Earth heroes, they have me. I will be playing this set, and that is as someone who has, at most of the time in the game, had access to every hero in the game. I am playing Rosetta. But I'm not a new player, so this video isn't for me. After that, what score would you give me? I personally feel like I've done a good job on these videos. I'm setting up this playlist that's going to have all of the sets in eventually, though if they're not there now, just bear with me. As you might imagine, recording these takes some time. However, I do have a new player hero guide series that goes through each of the heroes individually, just giving them 10 or 15 minutes asking, are they good for new players? So that's my next step for you. It's linked in the comments below. Also, please do like and subscribe. I've been running this channel for 5 years, and the modus operandi of my channel is from the player's perspective. And that means I will ask the hard questions that players should be asking about anything they engage with. Was that fair? Was it priced correctly? Was that ban fair? Was that DQ fair? Was the judge right when he made that decision? Are these booster packs predatory? Do they give us enough? Is prize support good for this tournament? I'm not afraid to ask any of these questions and question the designers and the companies that run the game, run the tournaments for the game. Question the players if they say, I did nothing wrong and we think they did. I'm always going to be on the side of the players, trying to make sure that anyone who's engaging with the game has the best experience possible. And if that sounds like the sort of thing you want to engage with, well, I do the weekly episodes most weeks, unless I'm traveling, and I will be here to talk about what matters to you until the game is gone. So like and subscribe to the channel, and welcome to the world of Flesh and Blood. It's a fantastic ride.